A vast empire's greatest foe, a conquered people's last hope. His name is Hanuvar, and he will set his people free. Ave, my dudes, and welcome back to Pax Romana. I read a lot of history, and I read a lot of fantasy, but unfortunately, I haven't read a lot that combines the two. But after Lord of a Shattered Land, written by Howard Andrew Jones, I will be reading more going forward. Let's talk about this amazing book. Lord of a Shattered Land is book 1 in the Hanuvar series. We follow our hero, Hanuvar, as he travels through enemy lands in an attempt to free his people from slavery, or worse. Our protagonist was once the great general of Valanis, and almost defeated his enemy, the Dervan Empire. He even brought his army close to the capital city. Does any of this sound familiar? Hanuvar is, of course, based on the historical figure Hannibal Barca of Carthage, and his wars against the Dervan Empire are based on the Punic Wars. The Dervans are, of course, a representation of an empire you may have heard of, the Romans. Unlike the end of the Second Punic War, where it resulted in a treaty and Carthage wouldn't be destroyed until the Third and Final War, in this story, Valanis, the capital, is completely destroyed, and the Dervans believe Hanuvar to be dead. He was last seen plunging into the ocean on the back of a dragon. Yes, really. In this fantastical version of historical events, Hanuvar, once recovered, sets out to travel through the Dervan Empire and tries to rescue as many former citizens of Valanis as he can. We follow Hanuvar as he attempts to do just that. Other than the obvious differences from the historical events, this being a fantasy world, or more correctly described as a sword and sorcery story, we have the fact that the Dervans are an empire with an emperor and not a republic, as the Romans were during the Punic Wars. Famously, the real Hannibal would face exile from Carthage after the Second Punic War, and even flee to the east to serve in the court of Antiochus III. Eventually, he would take his own life to avoid being captured by the Romans. Hanuvar instead acts like a spearhead aimed for the heart of the Dervan Empire, sometimes disguised as a Dervan citizen, circus worker, or even as a soldier of the empire. We are told these adventures not in the way a normal novel does, with one continuous story, but instead each chapter is its own complete adventure with a beginning, middle, and end. They do go in order, but each one is its own contained story. If you're a fan of the Conan stories by Robert E. Howard, then this form of storytelling will be familiar to you. In fact, reading this reminded me of the adventures of Conan. I read Conan when I was younger and loved it because it was just something you could pick up and read quickly to get an entire tale. I love long novels, of course, but sometimes you just need some quick and fun action-packed reading. And like Conan, that's exactly what Hanuvar is. Each story reads like an adventure of the week, but you learn a little bit more about Hanuvar and his past with each chapter. By the end of the first novel, you feel you have a pretty good idea of what Hanuvar is about, but you are left with the feeling that you're still missing a sizable amount of Hanuvar's plans. I want to talk about my favorite adventure in the book, which is Chapter 10, The Missing Man. Hanuvar and others interested in the slave are led deep into the manor, and a string of murders begins happening. Along with Hanuvar and others, a revenant is in with the group. Revenants in the Dervan Empire are elites who usually travel in threes and are basically the Dervan secret police. Hanuvar needs to react to the murders without giving away his true identity. A big part of these stories is Hanuvar learning to act and lie his way through without being caught. Speaking of acting, Hanuvar doesn't travel alone. He travels with a playwright named Antares. While traveling with Hanuvar, he writes down their adventures, planning to one day make them into a play. However, as we read the book, we learn we are actually reading the work of a historian who is a descendant of Antares. In fact, the book has notes from said historian, a man named Andronicus the Younger, spread throughout to help explain to the reader, who would have been a Dervan citizen long after the death of Hanuvar and Antares, about things they may not understand. We even get notes throughout the story from the historian if he doubts his ancestors' information, or if he thinks there's something we should know about each story. So far, I've only read book 1 of the Chronicles of Hanuvar, but I've read it twice, and I am really looking forward to the second book in the series. Unfortunately, while I was reading this book, I learned that the author, Howard Andrew Jones, was diagnosed with brain cancer and regrettably has passed away on January 16th, 2025. I feel like I haven't even got to know him as a writer, but I do plan on reading everything this man has written. As far as the series goes, I believe that 5 books were planned, 3 are currently out, and the 4th one is done and will come out eventually. This is unfortunately where the adventures of Hanuvar will end. I'm not aware of any plans of anyone finishing the story, and they probably shouldn't anyway. Hanuvar is a special character written by Howard Andrew Jones, and he should remain that way. I've read a good amount of Conan pastiche, and it's not even close to the stuff that Robert E. Howard wrote. I think we are blessed to have the Hanuvar stories we currently do, and should enjoy them as is. Of course, it's a tragedy that Howard was taken so young, but he undoubtedly left his mark with this series. I've always said I'm a terrible critic. To be honest, I've been asked to review things plenty of times, books, video games, etc., and I only do it when I like it. I understand that critics are important and we should know these things before we spend our money, but I'm just not the guy for that. Unless something is historically bad, like the BBC Julius Caesar documentary. We just won't talk about that. People work hard on things, right? And even with my limited audience, I don't want to shit on someone's hard work, you know? That being said, I do not need to worry about that here. This is a 5 out of 5 without a second thought. Not a boring chapter, not a sentence wasted. Hanuvar is fun from cover to cover. It's so good that a book about one of Rome's biggest enemies made me love it. I'm joking, of course. I don't harbor any 2,000-year-old bad feelings. Probably. As I said in the beginning, I haven't read a ton of Rome fantasy hybrids, but after this series, I plan on delving into much more. Book 2, The City of Marble and Blood, is definitely very high on my TBR. That being said, is there any Rome fantasy fusions that you're a fan of? Or even just some good historical fiction? I had a lot of fun reading this and narrating this video, so I would like to do some more in the future, regardless of how this video performs. All my videos can't be Roman shitposts, right? Let me know in the comments what you thought about this video, and if you have read Hanuvar, your thoughts on the series as a whole. Comment your favorite Roman fantasy novels so I can check them out, or consider joining the Patreon and possibly getting to pick the next book I read. Thank you guys so much for watching me. I know I don't post enough, but I am working on it. Please leave a like and a comment to help this video in the algorithm, and I will see all of you guys soon. And as always, Delende es Carthago. Or maybe Delende es Philanus? I want to give a quick thank you to the Patreon members, including Air Stoner, Tim Lockertson, Dark Weasel, Callan Nellis, Jeremy Abrahamson, History Marsh, The Pules, and our newest member, John E. Settle. If you'd like to join their noble ranks and help support the Empire, please go to patreon.com/updatingonrome, where you can join the community and maybe even pick the next book I read. Thank you guys for all the support.